Did the hierarchy of power actually change in the DCEU? What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another video. Today I'm giving you my updated ranking of all 12 DCEU movies as Black Adam just hit theaters. But before I do this, make sure to hit that like button and comment down below your ranking of all the DCEU movies as well as your thoughts on Black Adam, and check out my review linked up above if you have not already. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified for all of my future reviews, rankings, and reactions. So we're just going to jump right into this thing. Starting at number 12 for me is going to be Suicide Squad, which came out in 2016. This movie's an abomination. It's one of my least favorite movies of all time. It is easily one of the most disappointing movies ever because the trailer and marketing for this movie was so badass, and the final result was one of the most forgettable and lifeless, just terrible superhero films I've seen to date. But coming at number 11, not much better than this, is Wonder Woman 84. What a massive disappointment this movie was. I remember it came out Christmas 2020 on HBO Max and in theaters on the same day, and I watched this Christmas night, and man was this movie a snoozer, especially for them marketing as such an action epic superhero movie. There was not a single action sequence for the first hour and 10 minutes. There was way too much going on in this movie, with Cheetah being in the movie, Pedro Pascal's character whose name I couldn't tell you for money, and then bringing back Steve Trevor. It became too crowded and convoluted, but this entire movie was just goofy, never really took itself as serious as it needed to, and it's extremely forgettable, unfortunately. But coming in at number 10 for me, another stinker, and the last of the full-on stinkers in the DCEU, is 2017's Justice League, directed by Joss Whedon, a movie that has essentially been erased in pop culture because we have a director's version of this movie that I'm going to talk about later on. Yeah, this movie stinks. It's really, really bad, and I've seen it once in theaters, and I forgot it. You know, it came out like 5 years ago now, and this entire movie has almost escaped my mind fully because there's a new and improved version that pretty much took this one's place in pop culture history. So there's not much for me to say here. The atrocious CGI mustache removal of Henry Cavill exists. It's on film for everyone to see, and this movie is only like an hour and 59 minutes because the studio wanted it to be under 2 hours, and it's a mess for that reason. But coming in at number 9 for me, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, is the newly released Black Adam. I think this movie's fine. I don't think it's a bad movie. I don't think it's a really good movie. It is a middle-of-the-road, okay movie with some fun elements for sure. You can tell this is a passion project for The Rock, and he poured his heart and soul into it, and I do have to commend the movie's humor. I think that it's got some funny bits, and you know, it doesn't feel like forced humor. It's more so authentic, which I always admire. Now, I will say this movie is action from beginning to end, and that is its downfall. While action sequences can be cool, and I love to, you know, go to the big screen and watch an awesome superhero showdown, after 10 to 15 minutes, it gets kind of tiresome, and then when the entire movie just becomes one long flashy CGI fight, it's like, okay, we've kind of sacrificed story and characters for over-the-top action epicness, and I kind of just checked out after that. Obviously, the post-credit scene in this movie is badass, and if you guys have seen it, you know exactly what it is, but Black Adam was unfortunately pretty forgettable and one of the more generic superhero movies in recent years. But coming in at number 8 for me is going to be Aquaman, and I admire this movie because it knows exactly what it is. Is it campy as hell? Is it cheesy? Absolutely, but it fully embraces that, and that's why I respect this movie more than some of the others on this list. It knows exactly what it is. The visuals are super hit or miss in this movie, which is weird to say, but Jason Momoa is just having so much fun in the lead role. He's a really likable protagonist in Arthur Curry / Aquaman, and there's a pretty compelling story here, battling for the throne, and you know, seeing epic action scenes play out underwater is pretty sick. So while the movie has its ups and downs, I think it's overall a fun time, but again, sort of forgettable, kind of like a lot of these DCU movies, at least the lower ones. But number 7 for me is a movie that a lot of people love. It is 4 hours and literally the longest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know if anything will ever top that. Zack Snyder's Justice League, which came out in 2021, which is crazy to say. Literally last year, this movie came out exclusively on HBO Max, and it's a much improved version of the theatrical cut of Justice League, which I spoke about earlier. I'm so happy this movie came out because it's cool to see Zack Snyder get to have, you know, his full vision put to screen, especially after the unfortunate circumstances surrounding his exit from the Justice League movie that came out in 2017. But this movie did Superman right. It had a wonderful score and a rockin' score at the same time. There's a moment that gives me absolute chills when Superman's wearing his black suit, and all around it's a much better story than the actual Justice League movie that hit theaters. Now, with that being said, the movie is not perfect by any means. It still has its flaws, and why the hell is it 4 hours long? I don't know, because the last 45 minutes of this movie are random post-credit scenes that really are never going to come to fruition because the Snyderverse was shut down by Warner Bros., unfortunately. There's a lot of awesome interactions among the actual Justice League team. Cyborg has a lot more to do here. Flash has a pretty critical role, and all around it's just great to see the team work together going up against Darkseid. My big takeaway from this movie now, though, is that it's just a bunch of setup for something we're never gonna see, which is a big bummer and kind of inhibits the ability to go back and rewatch this one. Number 6 on my list is gonna be Shazam, one of the most pure fun DCEU movies out there. This was like a recharge that the DCEU needed because a lot of their movies are very dark and brooding. This one's more fun, feels more like a Marvel movie, which I think is safe to say, and it has a decent enough villain and just an adventure type of story, coming of age feel. You know, it's an innocent, kind of sweet and charming DCEU movie. Nothing too serious, but this is kind of reminds me of the Ant-Man movies in the MCU in terms of just family fun. Shazam's way more lighthearted than a lot of these other movies, and it's one that I could throw on and just have a fun time with, so that's why I enjoy it more than some of the other movies that I put on this list. But coming in at number 5 for me is actually going to be Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. That being said, the Ultimate Edition of this movie is not masterful by any means, but it is significantly better. You know, makes more sense why certain events flow the way they do and certain characters are where they are. We get a great Ben Affleck Batman who is absolutely jacked in the role, but also a really slept on Batman. I feel like he's not really appreciated by a lot of the fans, and they do a great job of setting up both Batman and Superman and letting us understand why they have to show down. I was fully on Batman's side, and I think a lot of people are in the context of this movie. Almost like they paint Superman as the villain, and I kind of was rooting for Batman in this movie. You also get Wonder Woman's intro here, which is really great to see, but the stupid Doomsday thing at the very end always bothered me. Like, anytime there's a movie where like heroes are facing off against each other, it's become so cliched for them to team up by the end of the movie, and it's like, this doesn't need to happen every single time. We can kind of break free from that. But the movie took chances, you know, it killed Superman at the end, and it was a gutsy movie, even though it is kind of forgettable. The BVS fight itself, as well as Wonder Woman's entrance, are badass and highly memorable moments in DC comic movies. Number 4 on my list is going to be Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, but no one ever says that because it's a little bit of a pretentious title for a movie, so I'm just going to call it Birds of Prey. But Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, without question, is one of the most iconic superhero castings of all time, and this movie's very fun. People call it a Tarantino-esque comic book movie, and I definitely see where they're coming from because the way it kind of tells events out of order, and you kind of have to put the pieces of the puzzle together as you go along. But it's very stylistic, it's a lot of fun. Ewan McGregor as Black Mask is just having a total blast in the role. Birds of Prey, slept on movie. I feel like a lot of people didn't see because they came out in like that dead zone February 2020, right before COVID hit. I didn't watch this movie for like until a year after it came out. Thoroughly enjoyed this one though, and I do need to rewatch it sometime soon. Number 3 on my list is going to be Man of Steel, the one that started it all for the DCEU. Henry Cavill as Superman, what an absolute legend he has become. I do like this movie quite a bit, but I haven't seen it in a minute. I need to rewatch it soon. I remember seeing it in theaters and just loving it. And the one thing I will highlight about this movie that actually is better than the movie itself is the score by Hans Zimmer. Whenever I hear this piece of music, I immediately want to better myself, go for a run, work out, or just run through a brick wall because it is that damn good. It's so uplifting, and the movie itself I think is a little too long, and I have certain issues with it, but I haven't seen it in a minute, so I gotta rewatch it. And shout out Russell Crowe too, Jor-El at the very beginning, really solid. My runner-up for my favorite DCEU movie at this very moment in time is Wonder Woman, which came out in 2017, and I will always remember seeing this one in theaters and just being like, damn, this is just a badass movie to see in the summer. The first 2 acts are super standout to me, especially when Wonder Woman has her scene in the trenches. What a kick-ass score this movie has. My gosh, it's very memorable. It slaps. The major critiques of this movie are the third act, which, to be honest with you, it's a little forgettable, not as standout as I wish it was. But if we're comparing DC to Marvel here, this is like a Captain America First Avenger type movie where we go back to the war, and I'm all in on that. Really enjoy this movie, and I like how it's like a DC war film. It also just gives Wonder Woman so much to do in this universe, and she's great. I hope we see more of her soon in DC. But my favorite DCU movie without question is The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn. This movie takes risks. It's pure fun and madness from start to finish, and I just loved every second of it. The opening 10 minutes really set the stage for the rest of this movie, with tons of the characters just being killed off immediately. I appreciate this movie even more after the Peacemaker show, which added so much depth to the villainous character of Peacemaker in this movie, who was just such an asshole, but now I understand him so much more. Idris Elba's Bloodsport is a highlight. King Shark and Peacemaker. Great character. The cast all around is loaded. We get more Harley Quinn just being an absolute scene stealer here. And also Polka Dot Man, a really compelling character who has a tragic story. The Peacemaker versus Rick Flag fight scene is insanely well shot with the reflection in the helmet, and there's just so many standout moments here. This is like the rare superhero movie that's just so vastly different from the template that's been set by blockbusters today, and because of that I have to commend James Gunn for just crushing it. He also crushed it with Peacemaker, and pretty much anything he does moving forward I am 100% on board with. But this is by far my personal favorite DCU movie. I don't see anything topping it anytime soon. So that's going to do it for my ranking of all 12 DCEU movies. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Be sure to hit that like button. What are your thoughts on Black Adam and where would you place it? Let me know that in the comments down below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.